Alrighty, criticism for Brooklyn. So your learning intention is to be aware of criticisms of the novel and to develop your own reading of the novel. The idea isn't that you read these and think, yeah, I agree, it's a bad novel. But you might think that, and it might be ammunition for you if you do believe that. It'll be things you can talk about and use in an essay or a text response. So your success criteria is you will have considered criticisms of the novel and whether you agree with them or not. Simple as that. Your task again, note down each of the criticisms in one column, left hand, and on the right a short response on whether you agree or disagree and why. So again, you can write it, type it, take a picture, show off, use Office Lens if you want, whatever you want to do to show off. But the important thing is that you've considered it and you've got a broad overview of what you think on the book. Criticism 1 is that it avoids descriptive set pieces. So I referred to this earlier, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing is up to you. Obviously it's true that it does this. Do you think that that's good or bad? Alright, so criticism 2 is that it's not a romance novel. So obviously this is drawn not from a critical essay, but from someone's review on Goodreads. It isn't a romance novel, it's got some romance and love in it. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? Eilis doesn't change or progress at all through the novel. That's something that can be debated, whether you think that's true or that's not true. It's up to you what you think, write down why. Criticism 5, tells rather than shows. So probably every English teacher in your high school and primary school career has said that you should show rather than tell. So you don't just say, Eilis felt sad, you would say, her shoulders sank and she dragged her feet as she walked home. But he quite often simply will say, Eilis felt sad, depressed, she thought about her home and she felt sad. It does make it a little bit quicker paced of a novel as a result, but you need to decide whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing. Modern sensibilities view the sex scene as rape rather than consensual sex. This is a pretty fringe criticism or a pretty strange complaint, really. There are a number of parts in the book where she explains how she felt about it, and it's probably not that, but as you read it, as a reader, as a modern reader especially, did you think it read as a, two virgins having sex, or did it seem as a rape scene to you? Alright, so there's a limited description of Brooklyn as opposed to Enniscorthy, and people suggested maybe that's due to limited research, though he has lived in the US for a number of years, but yeah, obviously it's a little bit different writing about the 1950s of an area, the 1950s period rather, and he would have to have done a little bit of research. So some people have said his description of Enniscorthy is beautiful, while his description of Brooklyn is not as good. Number 8, the novel's plot is straightforward, so that's true. Is that good or bad? The ending of the novel is lame. Did you find it completed what you wanted the story to finish on? Was it the right ending? Was it boring? Was it dull? What do you think? Eilis is annoyingly passive, so this is more of a critical one. And again, it's probably a modern reader type thing. At the time, perhaps you could say historically it wasn't that uncommon for her to act in the way that she did act. But it's whether you found that annoying or that you found that it was true that she was overly passive. So some themes were too obvious, for example, the references to the Holocaust fail, and again this is a critic rather than a average Joe. So briefly there's a quote, something in regards to how could people do that to his people, and that's in reference to a Jewish character, and that's his glib attempt at explaining the Holocaust or mentioning it. Just, I don't know, maybe it seems tokenistic to you, or you thought it helps situate the story in the novel in the time that it was in. So Eilis is a largely voiceless and powerless woman. That's basically true. Do you agree? Did you think that helped the book or it hurt it, or did you like it or dislike it? Very little happens, which depends on how you look at it, I guess. It depends on what you think novels should be about. Should they be about famous, important people who went out and made billions of dollars, or just normal people who went about their lives and then perhaps they died? It's badly written and repetitive. This is of course the crux of it. Do you agree? Do you disagree? The constant presence of the narrator at the expense of Eilis. So again, referring to the authorial style or authorial intent, this is true, I guess. The narrator is constantly there. Eilis doesn't get as much of a view, I guess, as much of a say, but it's being described by the narrator, so it's sort of hard to discuss. Do you think this was a good thing or a bad thing? Criticism 16, circular, often obvious plot. So this is from Christopher Taylor for The Guardian. Circular in the sense that it just comes back to the start. She leaves and she returns. That's pretty obvious. But he found the plot too obvious and contrived. Do you agree or do you disagree? Alright, so what I need you to do is, as the task says, note down your thoughts on each of these criticisms, and then we'll have a more full discussion in class, and we might write a couple of paragraphs on it as well.